going down.
That looks killing, man. That looks
Oh,
killing.
it's so fun. I mean, I was just hanging out, and I mean, I'm playing it all the time. I'm playing it a lot, and I think it sounds pretty good too.
Oh,
All right, that's the neck. Here's bridge. Then you can.
what kind of vibes it got? Is it all of its own? Is it something that
I don't know.
when you play it, does it remind you of something, or is it just
You
like
tell me.
completely out there?
Then it's got like you combine both pickups and it's a jazz bass. Right? You hear that mid-scooped thing?
Yeah.
But then you put them in series, almost sort of like Rickenbacker or something. But then the pickups by themselves, the neck pickup, just has this warmth to it. I don't know, but still mid-range. And then the bridge pickup is also like super useful.
It's quite barky, isn't it?
Yeah, man. I don't know. I've been really enjoying it, man. I've been doing some baritone-y, doing this stuff with it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Oh, by the way, I'm cracking open the wine.
Dude, crack it open, man. I've got we're doing this in the evening. I'll tell you what a coffee addict I am. I've got a cup of coffee in, it's 2:30 in the afternoon. I suppose that's not terrible, but I'm that guy that drinks coffee like up into up into bedtime. It's not good.
Yeah, well, since you told me about your coffee addiction, like I thought I was bad, and then you kind of revealed yourself to the world, and you're like, oh, I drink coffee at, I don't know, like whatever time of night, like 3 a.m. on the way back from a gig and stuff. I was like, huh. And since then I've had my coffee addictions went it's worse. It's gone to a new level. It's totally your fault. I'm like, well, Ian has one at so I'm like, I'll have one at 6:30. I'm not freaking joking. I'm like, I'm having coffee at 6:30 because of you.
It's just like we're just enabling each other. It's just pretty soon. Also, dude, you just got another bass. You ordered another bass recently. I feel like now I did, and I'm like, oh, Scott got that bass. Maybe I should. Oh my god, dude, here we go. It's just like,
I did order that bass. Maybe that was actually subconsciously. Maybe you getting that new bass pushed me towards getting this new bass. I don't know.
Put that on me.
I haven't thought about that until you mentioned it. Then I was like, oh shit. Yeah. So I've ordered I think you pronounce it Man. It's MANNE. And it's a ridiculously awesome, but also ridiculous bass. It's like a 6-string. It's as alien as they come. A 6-string, 31-inch scale.
Looks insane.
It's mainly, it looks insane. It's mainly piezo or piezo or however you pronounce that.
Yeah.
Everybody actually knows.
Yes.
And the reason why I'm getting it is because one of my favorite bass players of all time, a guy called Daniel Kamada, who actually went to Berkeley with Schoolie Sverrisson and Garrison and all of them guys. He plays one, and he just sounds so amazing on it.
Yeah.
That I just want to, if I can be like 5% of that, I'm going to have a great day. I'm going to have a great day.
It's that thing that we were talking about on a previous episode of we know that the gear won't make us sound like these people, but even if there's a chance, right?
Yeah, 5%, I'm good.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous, man. It's a beautiful instrument. I'd never even heard of him before, so I need to do my research.
Have you heard Danielle play?
No, I have not. And I know you and Herrera and Jonathan Herrera were talking about it in the chat, and I need to get hip to that, man.
I'm just seeing if I can find him on here.
Please.
He's not really I say this me from the best place possible. He's not really a bass player. He's just sort of musical entity to himself.
Yes.
He's just this. He's saying he's a bass player in somebody's head that just puts the wrong seed.
Right.
It just
he's a musician and an artist that happens to get his ideas out on the bass. Oh. What?
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
It's bonkers.
do you know what it reminds me of, Scott? Because you started out. Did you ever play classical guitar?
Yeah,
You did, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it gives me a little bit of that like nylon classical acoustic sound almost. And that's I've always said piezo, but I feel like that's the incorrect pronunciation.
I've got no idea what it's called. Honestly, that's a
piezo.
piezo.
But that sound, man, I actually used to have one of those Peavey B Quad 4s. It was Brian Bromberg's signature bass.
Yeah.
That he made with Peavey, and it had those transducers in the saddle. I'm not going to say the P word anymore because now I'm self-conscious about how I pronounce it. But it had that big, wide, amazing range, and you could use nylon strings with it. I never did that, but I liked the idea that I maybe could, But boy, I strung that up as a piccolo at one point, and I actually made like a little Christmas EP just for my family of sort of like rearranged, sort of sad sounding, ominous, took everything that was in major key and made the like relative minor like chord changes and made this sort of melancholy Christmas EP on piccolo bass. But it was that instrument.
Did they dig it?
Yeah, man.
Did they dig it? Yeah.
My mom still, and I think my mom has started to listen to this podcast, which is hilarious. But mom, she still rocks that, man. She puts it in her 5-disc changer, and she'll spin that at Christmas, which is pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet.
Oh, amazing. And side note, right? How good is Brian Bromberg,
dude?
What?
Brian Bromberg. I was introduced to Brian at a jazz festival that my parents used to take me to, or my mom used to take me. My mom and stepdad used to take me when I was in junior high. And I just remember I was into metal and hip hop. And so I was not really interested in the music. And then this guy, Brian Bromberg, was there, right? And he just blew my mind playing. He was on Upright on the main gig. So they would do these, master classes and stuff during the day at this festival, but then would do these like big concerts at night. Incredible. I mean, I got to see Elvin Jones play drums. I got to see, Herb Ellis on guitar. Wow. There was Oscar Peterson, and I just didn't know. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. And Brian was always the house bass player. And he would play upright on all that. And then when he would get a solo, he would tap and do all that insane, like two-handed stuff on upright too. And so then he did an
album called Wood.
Yeah.
He did an album called Wood. It's a solo double bass album. It's bonkers.
It's bonkers.
It's like every time I watch Brian Bromberg, so even though everybody knows who he is, well, no, that's a lie actually. Everybody doesn't know, like all of the sort of like the bass geeks know who he is, right?
Yeah.
But when I watch him, every time I'm like, my first thought is, this is bonkers.
Yeah.
My second thought is, why is he not more well known?
I know.
I really think that he's like hidden away somewhere, and I'm not sure why. It should be so well known.
I think maybe because he's really embraced that like smooth jazz lane. I feel like he never really tried to break out of that, which was so interesting because he just sort of decided that was his thing. And I really commend him for that. I mean, and I think in a way, like you've got a guy like Corey Wong who's really embracing the smooth jazz thing with, with Dave Koz and stuff. And Brian was just almost like a little like before his time. Embracing the smooth jazz thing and really identifying with it. Did I ever tell you when I was 15, maybe even 14, my mom was able to get in touch with Brian's manager, whose name at the time was Lucille. I don't remember her last name, but she got me a lesson with Brian at this jazz festival, and I'll never forget, man. I went into the hotel, and Brian was like, "Yeah, come on in," and he hung with me for a couple hours, and man, it really changed my life. We've had discussions before on this podcast about teaching experiences, and I told you that story about my first teacher who was really really abusive. And Brian was unreal. He did this thing where he was like, "Play something for me," and I slapped something for him, like fast and frantically, just to like, "Dear God, please think I'm good," that thing we do like as teenagers, And he was so sweet and said like, "Oh, I can see that you have potential, and he said some really nice things. And then he said, what do you want to do today? And I said, I want to know how you do that tapping thing where you put a hand up here and the other hand here and you do that. And he said, well, okay, hang on a minute. Do you know how to make a chord on the instrument? And I said, no. And he said, oh, well, let me show you this. When I do this down here on the bass, I'm playing the root and the fifth. And up here, I'm playing the seventh and the 10th, which is just a third an octave higher. Do you know what any of that means? Yeah. And I said, no. And he said, well, that's what we're going to do today. And he said, because without that, the tapping is not even relevant. And I said, okay. Yeah. And I remember
you're going to be worrying about the icing and you're going to have no cake.
Exactly. And I remember being sort of like disappointed because I wasn't going to get the trick, Yeah. But he really changed my life. In that 2-hour block, he showed me how to play all those, like root 7, 10 chords, how to like move through 2-5-1 progressions. I mean, this is something that I was playing, rock and roll with a pick. And he was like, check this out. And I think we even dove into modes a little bit, and it really whet my appetite for theory because I could see how he applied it and that it wasn't about the technique, that it was about the chord thing. And dude, check this out. So classy, get done with the lesson. He gave up a ton of his time. And my mom was there, I'll never forget this, with her checkbook. And she said, oh, Mr. Bromberg, thank you so much. What do I owe you? And he said, oh, it's on me. It was really, really nice to work with him. And thanks a lot. And dude, it didn't charge us. It was like,
amazing.
God, dude. I mean, Brian, if you're out there, man, it really,
absolutely.
It was like course correcting, trajectory altering. It was a huge, huge moment for me. Like, big deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
He gave you a glimpse inside the matrix, right?
Yes, he did. Yeah. Big time.
That's what I've been kind of sort of like playing with that analogy over the last few weeks. And I think it's because the Matrix is coming up for, well, not a re-release. They're releasing this new kind of film, aren't they? Is it coming next year?
I think
the
so.
Matrix film?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so they're releasing. So maybe it's sort of I've been blasting around on YouTube ads, and I've been seeing these sort of like glimpses of the Matrix, and it's obviously a fantastic film as well. But I was thinking about when people first start to get to grips with like harmony and understanding like 2-5-1s or 1-5-6-4, understanding what that is, and then understanding how bass lines are constructed from that. Like, how do you actually describe that to somebody who doesn't know? Who you're kind of sort of like saying, like, there's this thing, you need to sort of like cross over this bridge, and all of this good stuff's on the other side of the bridge.
Right.
And you're on this, and you're on the wrong side of the bridge, so you need to come across here with me. But it might not seem so sexy, but trust me, when you get to the other side of the bridge, it's the grass is greener over here.
Yes.
And I was thinking about this, but and using the analogy of it's actually like looking inside the matrix as a musician. It's maybe a better analogy because it really is. It's like you open the matrix, you put your head inside, and you're like looking, and you're like, holy shit!
Yes.
Everything makes sense.
All the
in
code
here.
scrolling.
This is the code, and all of the code is actually like chord tones and modes.
Yes,
you know, and you're like looking inside, and you're like, oh, I get it now. And you step inside the matrix, and then you can really understand how everything is constructed. Like something I've been doing recently because my kids have been learning piano is that I've been teaching them songs on the piano, and they listen to all of the pop songs, right? They listen to everything from Sia, so they're really into Sia, and they're really into like everything right down to Billy Joel, right? They listen to everybody right across the board, and I'm like playing Sia songs and I'm playing Billy Joel songs for them. I'm just like, this is exactly the same shit.
Yes.
And now I know that people are like, oh yeah, we've only got 12 notes. Yes. But no, seriously, it's the same.
It's all
stuff.
The same.
It's the same stuff with a different melody, with a different production quality, and it sounds completely different. It really is. There's only a handful of notes. There's only a handful of chords, meaning that we can only generate so many different permutations of those chords in different orders. And once you realize that, but not only realize it, but understand it because you've looked inside the matrix and you're like, oh, I get this now. That's when everything clicks.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
I'm excited for people that haven't had that before.
Oh, right, because there's
really
this
great when they get it.
That's coming.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah,
I remember feeling that way when I finally understood what a 16th note subdivision was. I remember I could kind of feel it was something was going boom, tack, boom, tack, like I could feel that, but I didn't know that it was 1 E and a 2 E and right? I didn't know. And then when someone explained that to me, I was like, oh. And I remember, there's that scene in The Matrix, all those bullets are coming at Keanu, right? And then he just was like, and everything slows down. And then he's able to just pick them out of the air, and they all fall to the ground, right?
Exactly
That's what I felt like. I remember feeling that way when someone was like, oh no, these are all just, there's just 16 grid pieces. There's a 1 and an E and an and the same for 2, same for 3, same for 4. I was like, what?
And you can just choose which to play on.
Yes.
You can choose which to play on, just like him picking the bullets out of the air. You can just choose which to play on, which not to play on. And it's just, it's great, isn't it?
It's so great. And it never felt to me like, oh no, now the mystery is gone. Like you on a previous episode, you had talked about when you studied with Willis, when you studied with Schooley, like they're all doing the same thing and none of them had any secret material. And I remember I asked you, did that make you sad? Or were you like, oh no, these guys don't have the answer? You said, no, to the contrary, I realized that it's all the same and that I have that too. That like it's all the same stuff that we're doing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it can go the other way as well, can't it? Because I think that it is really when you think about it like this, it's unbelievably simple in many ways. On the flip side of that, you can study this stuff for 50 lifetimes.
Yeah,
that's wildly interesting as well.
Oh, for sure.
That it's so simple in so many ways, but then so deep and expansive in other ways. It's
and it never ends.
Can anybody tell that we're doing this podcast a little bit later than usual? I've got the wine.
Dude, I love it, man. I love it. Oh, I love it. No, but you're right, man. Just when you think, aha, I have it. I have the secret. I have the, I know how to do this. Then like, oh man, now there's connotation or there's, some other style or genre or something, or you hear someone like that player you just played for me at the beginning of the episode. Like, what is happening? And I mean, wait a minute. Are you sure there are 13 notes? Because that guy sounded like he had access to 13, man.
That extra spicy one.
Wow, yeah, like, man. And it is. It's this never-ending thing. I remember when my daughter Everly was taking Taekwondo. She was really into it for a number of years. And there was a thing, I love this. I've thought about it a lot since. But it said one of the tenets of the particular Taekwondo dojo that she was at was Taekwondo, the pursuit of Sangmu Kwan, which was the particular style, is a lifelong pursuit. And that's one of the things that they tell the students at the beginning, which I thought was like, wow, man. Like, as educators, sometimes we don't say to people, oh, well, welcome. Now it's your whole life. We're very focused on getting results really quickly, and which is great. But there is this thing that I really love and resonate with that, like, wow, I mean, this thing is forever. You can constantly be learning. You can constantly be finding new things that have never crossed your path or your mind.
Absolutely,
and I think that's just fascinating.
I think the martial arts, like I did some martial arts when I was a kid up until, I did like a bunch of it. For anybody that knows anything about martial arts, I got to like 3rd brown belt.
Wow.
In karate, which is like one. Yeah, but sort of like damaged both my knees and ended up doing physio for like 18 months or 2 years or whatever. Anyway, and my brother was really into it as well. So it was because my dad was into it and my uncle was into it and the whole thing. But, and we did it and I never really thought about I guess I was a kid. So I was just like doing what I was told to do.
Right.
And that was the end, right? But watching my kid do it, so both my kids are doing it. And what's really interesting, I think, to your point, is that they've got this kind of like discipline vibe. It's serious.
Yeah.
And my eldest really vibes from that. Like he loved, and he's not, I don't know what it is, but he's just drawn to it. He really likes the kind of the mellow kind of vibes when he goes in the dojo, and the sensei's kind of sort of like serious. And me and my wife were like a little bit weirded out by it. Not in a bad way, but we're just like, wow, we just didn't expect him to be really drawn to that. And because he's super skitty, he's like 8 years old and he's just like batty and crazy. But this specific thing, for whatever reason, all of the stars aligned in the way that they position it, in the way the sensei teaches it, the things like this is a lifelong, there's the belt system, there's the white, there's the yellow, the orange, the green, and he really digs that. He really loves to know the path that he's working towards. He wants to know how long it's going to take him. He wants to make that shorter.
Yes.
He wants to know if you can hack it. That all of these things, I think, that line up to create something that's really great. And I think that style of discipline can be a real positive thing as well for kids.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not really sure where I was going with it, but
we were just...
I just think it's really interesting that all of those little elements can draw you towards it. And I think that maybe music could, use a little bit of that as well.
Oh, for sure.
Because I think that, we're arty and we like things to be free and easy, but I think that the discipline side of it is really important. In fact, great segue, because we obviously spoke yesterday, and what we wanted to talk about today is motivation.
Yeah.
Right. And I've been doing my homework. I've been thinking about this.
I love it.
Really thinking about motivation. You were like, just for context, everybody. I was like, Ian, what should we talk about? He was like, somebody contacted you, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they were actually. You tell the story.
Yeah. Well, I was actually Anita put up a thread in the campus. So at SBL, there's this campus where tons of people, members, students hang out, and there's all kinds of challenges. There's a program that Scott and I do there called Student Focus, where, you can submit yourself playing something, and then either Scott or I, we tag team giving feedback to it. And it's really cool.
I haven't drank all this tonight, by the way. Just in case, if anybody's watching
just
this, I'm
judging you so hard. Just
the
last drop, dude.
I'm getting every last drop out of there, but this half of this went last night.
I love it.
I had a funny old week. We've all been ill in our family, except me, actually. So I've been dealing with two really grumpy, ill kids and a grumpy, ill wife. Oh. And I've just been running. Yeah, it's been. We're actually supposed to be on holiday right now. Oh. We had to cancel the holiday, and everybody's grumpy. And I'm just, it's fine. But last night I was just like, I need a wine. And then tonight, I messaged you, didn't I? Yeah. I was like, dude, I need 15 more minutes. Well, I needed 15 more minutes because my youngest was in tears. Oh. She's like snotting everywhere.
Poor Winter.
Took her. I'm walking her up and down the street to help her with fresh air.
Oh,
I'm like, I'm texting you while I'm in the street holding it. You know what I mean? I bring her inside. I'm sitting there. I put the TV on to help take her mind off it. My wife walks in. She's like, what's the TV on? I go, it's 8 o'clock. I'm like, dude,
listen,
give me a break. I'm like, so when and then I got her to bed, and I was like, right, give me the rest.
Yeah, hold on. Where's that bottle? Where's that bottle?
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, it's all good.
So this guy messaged in the campus, didn't he?
Yeah. And I think...
What was he saying?
He said he was asking about motivation, and specifically, so this is a guy that has submitted to the Student Focus program before, is really on it, right? Records his instrument. I don't know how to say the name, but I think it's Bangra. I think that's maybe how you'd say it. But I hope you wouldn't mind if we talked about this. But he was just sort of saying...
Do apologize if you do mind. If he's like, do not talk about this.
Do not air my, Yeah. But I think it's actually something that so many people struggle with. And then when actually someone admits the struggle, right, and is vulnerable enough to say, hey, what do you do? Because we all want to say like, oh no, we all want to be posting on social media and playing in our bands and recording music and, and showing the world that we're busy. And so there is a bravery and a vulnerability that it takes to say, ugh, I'm just not feeling it, right? And he was sort of asking, other people and me, how we feel about that. Do we ever feel a lack of motivation? He was even saying something about how when he's even playing his favorite bass lines or working through stuff that he really enjoys, he's just not into it, doesn't really want to pick up the instrument even, and kind of like, ugh. And just sort of wanted to put that out there and see what people thought about it. And so I've been thinking a lot about it, and I'm sure you have thoughts about it too. But the first thing that I wanted to say, and I haven't actually responded to that thread yet, but this podcast will be a response. The first thing I wanted to say is, boy, don't judge yourself when you're not feeling it. Instead of thinking, oh, I should be, oh, I'm comparing myself to all these other people who are, I should be motivated. Why am I not? The first thing I think is to let go of any negative feelings of judgment of should or shouldn't, or, if you don't feel it, that's bad. Or, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like to think about, well, it's okay to not feel it. You don't have to feel it every day of your life as intensely as the day before. And in fact, that may actually be healthy to not feel this burning desire to play this odd thing, made out of wood and metal. Maybe that's actually healthy, not to always feel that burning desire. And I think that maybe if you, first of all, give yourself a bit of a pass and not judge yourself on not feeling motivated, that may help some of the baggage, and you may actually start to feel that motivation again coming up sooner than you would if you were constantly just berating yourself for not being more motivated, right? That's the first thing. Yeah. But I'd love to know too, I have things that I think about to stay motivated, and I think little, tips or tricks or things that I do when I'm not feeling motivated. But I also, I know you've got thoughts on this. I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, I went deep with this, man. Yeah. It sent me on a kind of, I'm just making another note actually. It sent me on this kind of weird, I just kind of like exploring myself. Yeah. Again, sort of like exploring my own psychology around this. And you know what? The first thing I thought of when you said motivation, I was like, the first thing that I thought, and I'm going to I can only speak my truth, right? So I can obviously give, maybe tips and tricks of how somebody could get motivated. I've just written one down. But I'll speak my truth just to give you sort of like through the lens that I'm looking through how I emotionally think about it. So two things to begin with. I feel that motivation, for me at least, right, is wildly overrated. I just think it's wildly overrated for me. And then after thinking about it more and more, I actually question whether I've ever been motivated to do anything.
Wow.
I actually, really, I'm not actually sure I'm not actually sure I have been. And then as I thought about it deeper and deeper, I started to question whether motivation is like is a cause of something else. It's like a secondary thing, right? It's coming from something else. I'm feeling motivated today, And when I was thinking about myself, I was thinking, why would somebody say I'm motivated? Because I don't feel, if I really think about it, that I've ever been motivated. I don't feel like I've been motivated. I feel that, and this is why I started questioning, well, if I haven't been motivated, but I'm really driven to do things, then if it's not motivation, what is it?
Right.
So somebody might look at me and think, he is a motivated individual.
That's how I feel.
But if it's being driven by something else, then it's kind of sort of like questionable whether I am a motivated individual or whether there's just some other thing driving that, what could be classed as motivation. Sure. But the motivation is just secondary. So for instance, one thing is that I've got like a really obsessive personality. I've mentioned that to you before. Yeah. I've got a really obsessive personality. So for me, if I'm not really obsessed about the thing, I am not ever going to be, I can't ever imagine myself like getting motivated to do it. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm just that individual where I'm either all in and really super obsessed about it, or I'm screwed.
Or you're not
and I'm
doing
not going to be it, and I'm not doing
Right.
it. I'm just, because I'll be obsessed about something else and I want to do that thing.
Right.
So for me personally, like the obsession about something is a key driving force to doing it. Why somebody might think, oh, he's motivated. It's actually that I'm just kind of sort of like super obsessed about something, and just to put it out there and loving it.
Yes.
Most of the time, but it's definitely but it's not all the time. I'm not. It's much more obsession than kind of sort of like, yeah, I'm loving this. It's kind of this obsessive need. This obsessive need to sort of like go after the goal, whatever the goal is. So that's the first
I
thing.
feel like, just an aside to this, I feel like you may have a negative connotation with the word motivation. Because whenever you're saying it in kind of this jokey, like, I'm so motivated, kind of like a self-help, kind of poking at that a little bit. Do you feel like the word is a bit of a red herring, or a bit of a tent pole, or I don't know, like a sign of, like a red flag maybe, of like, oh, something that's maybe a little bit cheesy or a little bit sales driven, or like, where does the negative connotation for you come from with the word?
I think it's because I don't feel negative about motivation. I feel like I'm just not sure whether I've ever been motivated. I feel like I have been motivated, but I've been motivated by obsessive behavior. I've been motivated by fear as well. So like, do you know what I mean? So it's like the motivation is actually fueled by fear. So I can speak to that as well.
Yes.
So for me, so let's talk about sort of like growing SBL, for instance.
Sure.
It's I'm motivated to do so, but I'm motivated definitely by obsession, but definitely by fear as well. I'm fear of, and the fear for me is, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Do not fuck this up.
Right.
Do not take your foot off the gas. You have to do great with this. There's too many people relying on you. I mean, like, as I'm saying it, this is all kind of like, it's fear-based, isn't it?
Sure.
It's like,
sure.
do not fuck this up.
Right.
Just like, and so it's, so when I'm sort of like, and just to put it out there, it's not negative. I don't feel negative about this. I don't feel down about it. I don't feel like I shouldn't feel like this.
Sure.
Like, I'm actually, I dig it. I'm like, I like it.
Yeah.
I'm on the sort of like the track, and I'm pumping along, I've never ran anywhere, obviously, but if I was doing that, I imagine sort of like a lot of those guys and girls that do track sports or sports in general, a lot of their driving, the lot of the motion that's driving them will be fear as well. Somebody else kicking their ass.
Yes.
Why is Lewis Hamilton out there training so much? Because he's probably a little afraid of somebody kicking his ass. There's always this fear base. So people are like, oh, he's so motivated. But why?
Right.
Like, what's that is a secondary cause of something else.
Oh, I like that a lot.
The underlying emotion? So obsession, fear, and then in amongst that, I think that, like me specifically talking to my truth, I'm really disciplined as well. So I will never, the obsession, the fear, and the discipline will always just make me, I'm never, if anybody's been to the gym or anything like that, and they're sort of like, you wake up at 5 o'clock. I haven't been this guy, but I imagine some people wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. They really don't want to go to the gym, but they're going to do it anyway. And they do it anyway because they're obsessed and because of the fear. Probably there'll be an element of fear in there, and they're disciplined.
Yeah.
So they make themselves do it even though they don't feel like it.
Sure.
And it's maybe these three things, and maybe there's more, but in the time that I've been thinking about it since you mentioned it, it was those three things. It was obsession and fear and discipline that really push me personally to look like a motivated person, or give me the motivation to actually go and do the thing.
I love this idea that motivation is a secondary trait, that it isn't the thing, right? It's and maybe when you said, I don't know if I've ever been motivated in my life, like that thing of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, here we go, we're racing up the mountain. That it's not that it's more like, well, I don't want this person to beat me up the mountain. I know that I need to get up the mountain because I've been doing it for the past 6 weeks and I'm moving toward a goal. That seems to me like a discipline thing, seems to me to be in a larger context. Would you agree with this, that discipline is about you're working toward something, whether that's just an overall sense of health, you want to be around longer for your kids, you're training for a race, you have a weight loss goal. There's some kind of goal right at the end of this thing versus the just like, well, in terms of music versus the like, well, I just want to get better. Man, when students say that to me, like, hey, what do you want? What do you want to do? And they say, I just want to be better. I'm like, because it feels like, I love if someone says, I want to put out 5 pieces of content a day or per week is what I mean. Or I want to join a cover band and play, funk tunes in 6 months. I love that stuff, right? Because then it's a goal. Like, at the beginning of this, many episodes ago, we talk about this SBL bike ride that we, who knows, right? Yeah. But that to me, I mean, that said, I still haven't been back on the Peloton. but if you say to me, I'm going to put it on you again. If you say to me, this is happening, Allison, Lord knows that will be the fear. The fear.
It's the fear, isn't it?
Dude, of Rufus Philpott just cycling away from me so fast. like, you know what I mean? Like just
yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, like I don't need to win, but I need to be able to hang. so I need to be on the bike enough to hang, right? So that would be my motivation. And motivation would be very secondary. The thing would be a goal. It would need to have the discipline piece would be a big deal because there's a thing that we're trying to train for. And do you think that music is similar to athletics in that way? Do you need to have a goal?
I think psychology is the same across the board in many ways. So I think that, I think you're exactly right. I think that if somebody's feeling like a lack of motivation, they need to look a layer deeper.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about the bike thing, why train?
Right.
Why train when you go? Because you don't want to be the guy right at the back. You don't want. I mean, you just don't.
Yes,
of course, you want to be able to hang, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be the letdown. But why don't you want to be the letdown? Because it's scary.
Yeah,
because
right.
People will be like, you'll let people. I mean, so my point is that, and all of this is going to motivate you, which is why people talk about, when you, to your point, I think, setting goals is really important to motivate yourself. And I know in terms of, fitness, etc., like that, it's a big deal to actually kind of put it out there to your friends, post pictures of yourself doing it to keep yourself accountable.
Right.
And people talk about that, and all of this is kind of, it's the causes that make you motivated. It's the root causes. So I think if anybody's really struggling with feeling motivated, they need to look a layer deeper. They can't feel that it's not just I'm not feeling motivated. It's like, okay, well, what's happening underneath?
Yeah.
What?
And I mean, the scary question maybe is, do you actually like this? Right? I mean, that's something where, I think that for a lot of people, and not to say that anybody that isn't feeling, it's not to put anybody on blast and say that if you're not feeling motivated, that, oh, you just don't like this. You just don't have the love inside. But I do wonder if people sometimes think about their trajectory in music and maybe things aren't happening for them. And then they start to feel this lack of motivation. And really, I don't know, do they really want to be doing this particular thing? Is playing music or is playing this particular instrument or this style not really bringing you joy? I think that stuff is hard for people to be honest about, because they've had a picture built in their mind of who they are and what they want to be. And maybe to say, you know what? I thought I was a blues bass player or whatever it is. And I'm just finding that I don't like it. And boy, the sooner that you can admit those truths to yourself, right? Yeah. The sooner I think you might be able to find happiness. And maybe it isn't about motivation. Maybe it's more about truth. It's like you said, it's digging into that layer beneath that can be painful and can seem exposing, right?
It is, yeah. It is exposing, and I think that's why we kind of really don't think about it. Honestly, I've never really thought about it until you asked me that question. Like, well, you didn't really ask me that question. You were like, let's talk about motivation. And I was like, oh shit, I don't think I've ever been motivated. It's always been driven by something else. And that was interesting to me. I think that, so say somebody's really feeling unmotivated, right? Say somebody's feeling really unmotivated. I think that I was just thinking about it then, a really fun way to play with this is, if you are feeling unmotivated, how can you put yourself in a real scary situation?
Ooh.
Where you're actually at risk of letting people down?
Ooh, that's great.
Yeah. So for instance, let's say we're a musician, right? So, well, I'm a musician, but let's say we're, keeping it more on the music side than the fitness side. Isn't it funny that neither of us do fitness and we're talking about fitness? Maybe it's just because we've got some sort of like inner longing. We're like, oh. Well, but maybe it's not, man. Maybe we've just got like inner beasts that are ready to come out.
Yeah,
it's like,
just we get so jacked. We're just like, whoa.
Yeah. But yeah, so imagine sort of like a musician. They're in a funk. They're feeling unmotivated. Well, now that I think that we're probably all on the same page in terms of that fear can be a big driver for motivation. How about putting yourself in a real scary situation?
Yeah.
So if you've never played in a band before, go get in a band.
Yes.
Go get in a band and start doing rehearsals, or go do some auditions, or like put yourself out there with a real risk of failure. Because I think that when you do that, I think that the lack of motivation, honestly, like I think, like I've been in this, so just to put it on me again, I've been in those situations where I have had to dig deep and, lean on that discipline and just kick my own ass and just like, no, do the work, do the practice. Don't care if you don't want to do it, just do it. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've also been in a situation where I'm like, you need to learn 20 tunes for like 3 days time.
Yes.
I've been there. And trust me, in those 3 days, I'm not thinking, you've got to lean on the discipline.
Unmotivated.
All of that is just gone. Yeah. All of that shit just disappears. You're just like,
fight or flight.
Shit.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So and honestly, it's a great, if you think about motivation, or one of the key factors of causing motivation can be fear. Well, what scary situations and pressure situations can you put yourself in to actually just inject that fear and that sense of like, oh shit, I need to do this into you.
This is so
a really great experiment.
Yeah, and this is so much better advice than the advice that I gave previously, which was, maybe you just don't like it. Everybody listen to Scott.
Well, maybe they don't like it, but I'll tell you what, do that first.
Yes.
And then if you don't like it.
Right. But man, that is such great advice. I remember in my mid-20s, I had an opportunity to sub for this great band in Minneapolis called the Irresistibles. And they did all this kind of like deep cut R&B material. There's a wonderful bass player in town here named Nick Salisbury. And he called me and said, hey man, would you want to do this? And I said, oh, and I was excited about the opportunity to do it. I got that feeling, that welling feeling of excitement that really has sort of guided me along. And he said, it's a beast workload. And it's not much money. And I said, oh, okay, what are we talking? And he said, well, it's about 70 tunes in the book. And my reading is so poor that I'm not the guy to just open a book and like crank through transcriptions. I have to get this stuff in my muscle memory, in my ears. I mean, it's so prepping for a gig like that takes me more time than maybe it would take someone who's a very strong reader, right? So I'm going, oh my God, 70 tunes, okay. And I was like, what does it pay, Nick? He's like, it's $100. And I'm like, ooh.
$1.10 to you.
Yeah,
whatever.
Like, all right. And then I think I even said like, okay, yeah, I'll do it, but oh man, I think I even sort of like complained a little before the gig, like, oh man, that doesn't seem like enough. And he said, I get it. The money isn't great, but let me ask you something. He's like, how well do you know this bag of tunes, or like this style? How well do you, how good and accomplished do you feel in like R&B bass playing? And I said, not very. And he said, okay, if you went to study with someone, what would they make you do? And I said, oh God, I already know what you're doing to me. I said, they'd make me learn tunes. He said, yes. And would they pay you to learn those tunes? I said, no, Nick Salisbury, I would pay them. He said, exactly. He said, so think about it this way, man. He's like, you're going to get $100 to completely revolutionize the way you think about the instrument. This will give you a whole nother bag. And whether you know it now or not, your playing will go like click to a next level if you learn this and you do this thing. And he was, of course, 100% right.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I did not need motivation to do this, because oh my God, man, Mick Sterling, who is this incredible singer in Minneapolis, is the band leader, and he's gonna know, man. He's gonna know if I did the work or not. You know, I want to get called again, right? I want these people to like me. I want to hang out on the breaks and be talking about music and talking about life with these people, and right. So boy, it was unfamiliar, and it was an incredible amount of work, but it led to other gigs, bigger opportunities, other things, you know, more money, right? And I never would have been, quote unquote, motivated to do that on my own.
Yeah.
I needed.
That's it. Yeah.
Right.
You just need the push, don't you? You just need the push.
I needed to say
sort of
yes to a low money gig.
To be ripped away from you.
yeah, man. And that is such great advice, because I have kind of been listening to people say lately, like, oh, procrastination is a great indicator of what you like and don't like. Okay, maybe that's true. But also, what if you throw yourself into a situation where it's sink or swim? And what if you swim? Well, will that actually create a new part of you that you really like and you didn't even know you had? Will it create this fire and this passion in you that was not being stoked before you had this opportunity? I mean, it certainly did for me. It's really good, Scott. I need to remember that. It's like throw like deep into the pool, man. Deep into the pool. That's good.
Yeah. Like, I think that, you know, I don't know, like I was just kind of came up with this whole thing just after, you know, like after I read your text last night, but I think that there is something in it. I think that reframing what motivation actually is. Yeah. And looking a layer deeper, looking at what you can do, you know, putting yourself out there, putting yourself in a scary situation, making yourself accountable to other people in a real way. Yeah. You have to learn 20 tunes. Yes. You are going to audition for a band. You are going to whatever. Do you know what I mean? But actually putting yourself in a situation. So to take it back to the fitness thing, because we're pumped and we're jacked, is like, I'm gonna run a marathon. Yeah. Just like, I mean, like, yeah. You are going to run a marathon. Like, trust me, I've seen somebody run a marathon without training. It's not freaking pretty. It's not like pretty. Bad. It's bad. It's bad. There's tears. You know. So and I know a lot of people that have run marathons, and they've all been motivated, you know, by fear to do the thing. So I think that it's definitely worth bearing in mind. I think, like, one positive, unpainful thing. Yeah. We've been talking about fear. We've been talking about being obsessed. Yeah. We've been talking about being freaking disciplined. Yes. All of this stuff. Right. I've got one positive, like, and maybe you've got some positives as well, sure. But of how to motivate yourself. And this for me kind of like links to the obsessive part, maybe. But listening to great players and finding great and just listening to great music, especially music that I am that I would love to play at some point in the future. Yes. That really motivates me. To bring it back to what we were talking about before, the Danielle Kamada thing. I I listen to Danielle, I'm just like, oh, like that motivates me.
Yeah.
And he's just doing this thing that he's like, I'm not even sure what the guy's doing, but I know that I'm going to sit down there and I'm going to work it out. And I'm going to just try and learn. And that motivates me, wanting to expand my mind.
Yeah.
That whole thing. And maybe, if I was, sitting on the psych couch talking to a counselor, they'd be like, well, that's still fear because, you are scared of not growing as a musician. And for sure, that's there. But anyways, I'll put that to one side. But anyway, listening to great music, listening to great players has always been a real motivator for me. I can remember going to record stores and I can remember buying records because the cover looked cool, because there was nowhere, I didn't know anybody to talk to really. There was no Spotify, there was no YouTube. I couldn't, so I was like, I can remember being in the jazz section, knowing that I wanted to get into jazz and picking up this album and thinking, like, this is serious. I was like, this cover's great. I'll buy it.
Yeah.
But
of course. I remember that too. Of course.
Yeah. So the cover was great. And I was like, I'm going to buy this. I don't know who any of these guys are. So I bought the album. It was Dave Holland on bass. So I didn't know any of the players. It was Dave Holland on bass, Elvin Jones, and Kenny Werner, who wrote the Effortless Mastery, the book. Kenny Werner on piano, right? Just like, I can remember putting it on and just listening to it and just think, and here's the deal. I didn't even know what they were doing.
Right.
But that motivated me. So I was like, I've got no, like, this sounds great. I've got no idea what they're doing. I just want to learn more about this. And just that sort of like constant, doing stuff like that.
The curiosity.
The curiosity, yeah. And I think that a lot of, just to touch on that 1 minute, a lot of the great players that I've met and had the honor of hanging out with and interviewing, if there was one thing that kind of sort of like ties them all together, is that they're really curious and have a childlike kind of approach to what they do, in that they kind of talk about bass and music with this childlike enthusiasm. Like, all of them have got that. I've not met one, like we were talking a couple of weeks ago about Ricky Minor, right? Yeah. And I'm hanging out in the studio, and after the interview, and the interview was kind of serious, but when we got he got into the bass room, he's got this beautiful studio. He's bringing out the Ken Smiths, and he was like 13-year-old Ricky Minor, and he's talking about, this thing and like recording with this person, like, oh, I did this with, it was mind blowing. And for that one, like at that moment when I was speaking to Ricky, and if anybody's wondering who he is, he was the guy that played bass for Whitney Houston on the massive track she did. What's the track called with Kevin?
I Will Always Love
Bodyguard. I Will Always Love You. He was the MD for that band, and he was American Idol. He was the MD for that. He's just recorded with all of these artists, and I can remember just thinking, this guy's just like a 13-year-old just talking about basses. Right. When he had that curiosity, he had that childlike enthusiasm. And I think that that's a really key thing to try and tap into and try and not lose.
For sure. And I wonder for you, so, when getting to know you more over this podcast, I always think about this thing you said in an earlier episode where you said, when you see someone online, the reason you will either like feature them on the SBL Instagram or not is if you think that the world needs to know about them, period, full stop. Like, and I love that about you, that when you see somebody that is a monster, it doesn't dig into your imposter syndrome or into your insecurity. In fact, quite the opposite. It's super inspiring to you. And you, instead of wanting to hide that away and, oh, no, because, well, what if I'm not as good as that person? You don't have any of that. You want to show people that. And I wonder now in this, I love that about you. And that's really inspiring to me. It's really, really cool. And it speaks to your honesty, your character, and like your sense of self. It's really like positive and healthy. It's really good. Really. But then, to hear you talk today about like, okay, you want to, is it Danny L? Am I saying that correctly?
Danielle, I don't know.
Okay.
I've never spoken to the guy, but Danielle.
Danielle.
Yeah. Like it's Daniel, but he's like from Spain, so Danielle.
Yeah. Thinking about like learning that material, I wonder, I mean, yes, you have this curiosity, and yes, you're not intimidated by that. You want to dig in, but I wonder if part of that is because your higher purpose is to then translate that to other people. So you're not going to learn it just for you. You're going to get this instrument that you ordered. You're going to dig into that dude's playing, and then you're going to be able to speak about it to the community of bass players, which is maybe speaks to like higher purpose. Like because you are an educator and you're passionate about educating, I wonder if for you that motivation or that curiosity is fueled by this thing at the end of your life, which is going to be the legacy that you have left behind of teaching people about this instrument, about players, about styles, about theory, and being a good ambassador for the bass. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Like, without a shadow of a doubt. I think that when I do listen to people like that, I get really excited about, how am I going to translate this? So everybody can understand it and they don't have to go through the pain of sitting there for like, I don't know, like 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months trying to figure this shit out. And how do I get that and kind of sort of like package it up in a way that people are like, oh, I get this? Because now there might be somebody thinking, well, it will take 6 months, but come on, like I like to have like I believe in creating an easy access for people into concepts, and easy access to people into concepts so they can understand it from like not in an intellectual way, in just sort of like a dude way. Dude to dudette. This is what's going on.
Right.
This is the shit. And they're like, I got you. Because I think that, I don't know, like I've got a low tolerance of academia in a way.
Yes.
Like I really have. I think that it gets overly kind of
the carrot dangling,
used.
Right? Or like you can't access this until you access this. The sort of hierarchy, right? And elitism of academia. I absolutely agree. And I mean, I think a lot of people see that in you. That's one thing when I noticed you, apart from other educators, I was like, there is someone who is willing to lift the veil. And not to say that, now you're going to be a world-class player in 3 days. It's to say, I'm going to show you, I'm going to demystify these things for you. And then however deep you want to take them is on you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think that it's really, really, really easy to make things sound complicated.
Right.
And this is for everything in life, not just music. It's really, really easy to make things sound complicated. And it's actually hard to make things, to simplify things and make it easy for people to digest.
Right.
It's so to make something sound complex, it's actually the lazy way around. Mm-hmm. It's you're either being lazy or you're trying to make yourself feel great. I'm so important.
Yes.
I think on a higher level.
Yes.
Like it's actually the truth, and it really pains me to see this happening. It happens all the time, not in music, in everyday conversations.
Right.
They're either not considering who they're speaking to and trying to make it easy for them to understand. And I don't mean I don't mean sort of I don't mean think. What am I trying to say here? They're not sort of like simplifying it. My point is it's not like you're talking to somebody that's stupid.
Right.
I'm going to, bring this down to your level. Right. So you understand. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just like, come on, like, making things easy to understand and easy to grasp is way, way harder than making things sound complex.
That's so true.
And fucking drives me nuts.
Yes.
Drives me nuts. Every day. Not just in music.
Sure.
In everyday conversations. I'm like, really? You have to say it like that.
Right.
You have to say it like that. You can't just simplify this and make everybody feel included in this conversation.
Right. It's like a class system, right? It's like, well, I'm here, you're here until you pay the dues, pay the money.
Dude, yeah.
Right? You will not be.
Zero. Yeah. Really, I've got a very low tolerance of it.
Yeah.
It really pisses me
well,
off.
that's I mean, and then that is the driver for your education style, that you see that and you're like, ooh, it doesn't have to be this way, right? The academia doesn't have to be the ivory tower. And what if it isn't, and what would that look like? I mean, that's been, I feel like you're the driving force for SBL, right? Is trying to make this thing.
It is the thesis. that really is it.
Yeah.
That even sort of day one or day zero of SBL, before there was an SBL, when it was just a YouTube channel, was, there's all of this stuff that's been actually quite hard for me to piece together. And how do I simplify this so it's just really easy? Because I'm not saying it's easy to, it's definitely not easy to execute.
That's true.
The instrument.
It's true.
But to understand it can be easier. It can be easier, a lot easier.
For sure.
Than a lot of people package it up as. And I think that has been always my thesis. And then just to get back to what you were saying earlier is yes, I love the idea of getting these ideas that, these things that people are doing and learning them, and then getting that and kind of reorganizing it in a way that sort of everybody can understand it. I love that. But then also, I think that I have a responsibility to keep learning myself, to be a great role model for people that are learning. In that, can you imagine? I just can't imagine being taught from anybody who isn't in that same cycle of learning and is inspiring you to learn.
Unfortunately, I
can imagine just I imagine people are like that, but I mean, how much more inspiring is that if you look at your guide, as it were, right? And your guide, they're learning and they're talking about what they're learning about, and they're talking about their experiences and what they're finding and how they're doing it. That versus, I am here, come and listen to me with all my knowledge.
Yeah, it's not very endearing, that's for sure. And I think it sort of hoodwinks kids in the beginning. I mean, that's this whole thing is built on that, right? College education, college music education too, is built on the canon of classical music and jazz music very similarly. We'll hear the upper level things, and we're not even going to talk about these high level musical concepts, whole tone scales and harmonic, melodic, minor, until we get, that's advanced jazz. And boy, it's just a sequence of notes. Why do we have to make this advanced jazz? Why can't I learn a Parker lick before I learn something off of Kinda Cool by Miles Davis? It's so silly. And I think it's for sure exists in the classical world, and it is big time in jazz world as well. We're like, oh no, you're not ready. You're not ready for this. And then it's so it's super elitist, because also, who's to say that the one Parker lick that I learn might motivate me to make some other kind of music, and that I never would have, found that if I would have, started with the other things and worked my way up the academic ivory tower ladder. So, I would just be like, nah, nah.
Exactly. And you will learn that Parker lick as well. And he will be doing sort of chromatic approach notes into a chord tone or whatever. And then you'll be learning the Jameson bass line. And then you're like, oh,
yes, dude.
Same shit.
Right.
Same shit.
Right.
It's the same.
It's the same.
As we
Sia and Billy Joel.
Yeah. 12 notes.
Yeah.
Sia, Billy Joel.
Yeah.
Right. It's all the same.
Right.
And I think that, it's just, Yeah, we're interesting beasts. Aren't we? But we really are, isn't it? It's sort of like quite expansive, isn't it? How you can think about these things. But yeah, hopefully, if anybody's listening to this, we did, I guess sort of like positioned our thoughts on motivation. Ian, like, have you got any? Like, I talked about how I have motivated myself in the past, obviously through the fear and the obsession, all of that, but also through the great players. Is there anything that jumps to your mind where you are like, that has been sort of like consistent through your career or your love of bass that has motivated you, that people might want to try out?
For sure. I think that motivation to me is tied to inspiration. So instead of thinking about it like, oh boy, I'm not very disciplined, and I'm also not as fear-based as sometimes maybe I should be. I think that when I feel the most motivated, like you say, you were saying I've never been motivated in my life, and then I'm wondering, God, have I also not been? but I think maybe you and I are defining it slightly differently. I think like when I'm feeling like I want to grab the instrument and really dig in, and that, to me, that maybe feels like motivation. When I'm feeling excited, that I think a better word for me is inspiration. And when I'm feeling a lack of that inspiration, it is always, to me, about doing the hard work of diving into something new. And it doesn't have to be just listening to the record that, my friends have been talking about for a long time. It could be, and I've talked about this before, watching a film. I talked about, like turning the volume down and trying to play the soundtrack. There was a great article, I think Will Lee wrote it for Bass Player a long time ago, where he said, think about playing a phrase and try to make it sound sad. Okay, now play that same phrase and try to make it sound terrified. Now try to make it sound joyous. Now try to make it sound like, its boyfriend just broke up with it. Like the phrase just went through a horrible breakup, right? So thinking about things outside of the classic shoulds. You should dig into Paul McCartney's playing with the Beatles. You should be transcribing Parker. You should, right? And all of those things are good. I'm not saying they're not good, but sometimes I get kind of this feeling like if I'm not doing the academic ivory tower work that people say, well, no, you need to be, that maybe I'm not on the right trajectory and I'm not doing it. But boy, I find inspiration in so many things. Case in point, I just discovered this band called Jupiter Winter. They are so wonderful. And I found them and they have they're like beautiful pop music. It's electronic pop music. It's super smart, great players. And I found this tune and I just fell in love with it. And I knew, like, for me, if I fall in love with a song, I'm immediately wondering how I would play it with them live. The track is called Lifetime. And boy, there's a great remix of it too. The original version's great and the remix is maybe even better. But oh my gosh, man, it's so good. And immediately I'm thinking about crafting the sound. I just did a post on it today on Instagram because I was like, I have to learn how to play this. And so what happens for me is when I hear a great song, a great bass line, or something that aesthetically is really super intriguing to me, I almost drop other things and I have to that's the inspiration piece. Then I'm turning on pedals, I'm plugging stuff in, I'm grabbing the first bass close to me, and I can't wait to kind of try to figure this thing out. And those are the moments for me that I can't let get wasted. I don't feel that all the time. I wish I had more discipline. I wish I had more fear around, I don't want to fall behind. But really what it is for me is it's about those bright blasts of colorful inspiration happen. Boy, I really need to prioritize that. And it doesn't need to be.
Yours sounds so much nicer than mine. It's all flowers and like I love that. Like over my side of the bridge, it's like, doom.
Dude, well, but also, hey man, you're building a bass empire. I'm in my spare bedroom trying to find the right delay sound. So I don't know who's doing it right,
dude. No, man. I think it's just a great representation of just two different,
Yes.
sure, ways of thinking about
Right.
it. And I think that it's great. Yeah. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So, sort of like to bring it back to Bangra, and I don't know that I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hear you saying, Scott, like, put yourself in a scary situation that you will have no choice but to feel motivated for.
The fear will motivate you.
Yes. Yeah. And that is great advice. And I have for sure been there. And I know that feels scary and good.
What about this, man? What about this?
Yeah.
Man? What if the key thing is to actually find the thing that will cause the motivation?
Yeah.
So understanding that the motivation is a secondary core, like a secondary thing, right? Finding the thing that will. So for some people, maybe it is fear.
Yep.
For some people, maybe it's whatever, and maybe that's completely personal. But you need to find the thing.
You need to find the thing.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah. I think that's so right. And you need to be really, really honest with yourself about what you like. Like if you know that it's going to feel scary, but you're also going to get so much out of diving into that band that you need to learn all those tunes for, do that. And if you're like me, where you're like, man, I hear one song, and if it's a winner, I will devote the next couple hours to just really uncovering it and unpacking that. Like that's... You just, it's about know thyself, right? It's about self-awareness and self-discovery and really knowing the thing that is going to make you feel great. And then I think too, to add on to that is to just not judge it. Don't, like, you might listen to this tune, Scott, and you might go, oh, I don't know if that's the style that but like, for me, I so love it that it doesn't matter like if everyone in my orbit likes it or not. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm confident enough to say, like, boy, this is really a thing that gets the creative juices flowing for me. And to know that about yourself and what that is for you, I mean, if that's going, some painters, right, take the easel to a new spot every day. I mean, that's such a fun thing too, to take your bass to a different location and play. And again, at the beginning, I said this thing of like, do you like it? Be honest with yourself about that. Answer that question very honestly. I think Will Lee, too, also around that same time, he was writing that thing about, play like it's pensive, play like it's furious. He also wrote a thing where he put 1 week off, the words 1 week off on a piece of staff, and then he had repeat signs around it. And he said, repeat as necessary. Like sometimes we get so, we've got to be digging into player's path, right? We have to be learning all the tunes for the thing. We've got to be, right? And maybe sometimes what we need, not me because I take my bass on vacation, but maybe what you need is just a breather, right? And sometimes that absence makes the heart grow fonder thing is also really true, that you don't always have to be in the shed. Do we, Scott? Do we always have to be in the shed?
I think it depends on who you are as a person.
Yes.
I think it depends on who you are. I think it's a lot about self-discovery. I think that some people need shouted at and some people don't. As you were talking about this, I was thinking about like what other people, like what do people need? Why do some people gravitate towards certain characters online and some people gravitate towards other characters online? It's because they need that. They need whatever they are,
selling,
whatever
promoting.
they're selling. Yeah. Whatever they're selling.
Yeah.
Not that, and I don't mean in kind of sort of like in a monetary way. I mean sort of like the concepts, the life, you know what I'm saying.
Of course. Yes. The thing that their values are, right? They need that.
Yeah.
You're drawn to different people.
We all
need
those
these values.
Yeah. And I think it's like there's a lot of self-discovery. I think that anybody can be motivated. I think that I just want to put that on there. I think understanding that motivation is sort of like a secondary thing. I think that anybody can be motivated. I think that it's about finding what will do that for you.
Yeah.
Is it this? Is it that? Is it? And I think that maybe the journey there is just to experiment with different things.
Yeah. And to just really not judge it, not say, boy, I'm finding that this particular thing isn't motivating me and I feel bad because all my friends think it should. Get rid of that crap. Know thyself.
Yeah, for sure.
Be okay to feel excited about the stuff that you're excited about. And then, but you have to do the work to look for that, right? And man, again, I just love that idea of throw yourself into the deep end. Boy, that's great. And I think too, so if you're in a spot where like, oh, it's COVID and, I can't really go join a band and play in the bars or whatever it is, do it online. I get DM'd, I bet you do all the time. I get DM'd all the time where people say, oh, how do I do this? How do I play on more stuff? How do I build this thing? How do I have career? And then I look at their Instagram and they've posted 5 times. And they've had the account for 5 years. And I say, are you kidding?
Yeah.
This is a place that, back to our first conversation about social media. There is a real opportunity too, where like, if you're thinking you want to throw yourself into something scary, and it doesn't need to be scary, but if you haven't posted, start posting, start documenting your journey through this language of music and see what that does. It doesn't necessarily mean you got to go out and just join an Afro-Cuban band and get your butt kicked learning how to play tumbao. Maybe it's putting up your practice regimen, every day on Instagram and creating a community around learning, coming up with people that are in a similar space to you. And I think there can be a lot of ways to throw yourself in the deep end. And I think that social media is actually a really good one that you can choose.
Yeah, for sure. I love the idea about putting your practice regime on, Instagram or wherever, but sort of like publicly posting about it. Here's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm finding is working great. Here's what I'm finding that's not working great. And like something else I was thinking about when you were speaking there as well is the difference between short term and long term, and taking it back to when you were talking about Emily going to Taekwondo?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it said on the wall, it was like, this is forever.
Yes.
And I think that if you're in a funk and you're feeling demotivated, well, if it's forever, it's psychologically that will be a different feel. If you're like, oh well, I'm in this forever and I'm in this funk and I'm not feeling the fire, that will feel different to if you've got a different view of what you're in here. If it's like, is this a 1 or a 2 year or 5 year thing, you're dipping your toe in the water, like I'm not feeling motivated, it's going to play out in different ways. I don't want to butcher it, but I heard somebody talk about this a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about the you can be like, where the fuck?
No, I can't wait. I'm pumped.
Right. They were actually talking about, so it's the concept, or it's just, I need to give you context, right?
Yeah.
So the context is they were speaking about winning and losing, right?
Yep.
And the guy was like, if you can do it for long enough, you win. The end.
Yeah.
He was like, it's about just having the, just the not the motivation, but just having the mindset to be in it for the long haul.
Like in showing up, right? Showing up.
There is no end.
Yeah.
There is no end. And he had great examples of when this has happened. But the one that stuck out to me that was most interesting was actually, and this is where I was like, you're going to think, where's he going with this? Was the Vietnam War.
Mm.
I was like, and I was like, where's he going with this? Like the Vietnam War. And he said for the Americans, he said it was, we need to go in and we've got a goal. It needs to happen in this time and we're going to try and make it happen. And there was like a huge, and I know nothing about the Vietnam War. So if anybody's thinking, you don't know anything. No, I don't know anything. So I'm just telling the story of how he was talking about this guy. But he was like, they had a deadline. Obviously, the deadline was the budget, and they tried to make whatever happen in a certain amount of time. He said the Vietnamese, they had it was the opposite.
Yes.
For those guys, they were just like, how long can we draw this out for? That was their strategy. Like, can we make this last 20 years?
Wow.
And that's what, and the way that he spoke, and he knew kind of like some very amazing statistics around what happened. And I was like, wow. because he said like the force of obviously the American military and on the Vietnamese side there was nothing,
Of course.
you know, but the strategies were completely different. And he was talking from a strategic point of view. If you are in it just for the long haul,
Yeah.
there's no losing. The game completely changes.
Of course.
It just completely changes.
Right.
And it kind of like, listening, I've probably butchered the message here, but hopefully somebody will be able to pull something out of it. His point was that it just completely changes. That if you are looking for motivation to keep on going until the end of the year, or maybe I'll do this for a couple of years or whatever. But if you are in it, if this is a lifestyle, if you are like, I am a musician for life, then it just changes everything. It changes the complete strategy of it.
I mean, I agree with that. Resonates with me so much that I know that I have self-sabotaged myself because I want things to go longer. Like, I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes like just the discovery of things or like working on specific shapes, it's not so much that like, oh, I don't want to work on it and I'm feeling lazy. It's kind of like, oh, I still want there to be things to discover. So, you know, I'm going to like really work on just one thing today. I'm not going to try to get through all of them because I really am excited then the next day to move on to the next little piece. Like I talk in student focus to people so much about bar by bar, every bar is a masterpiece. Like I feel that way about certain tunes. Like I feel that way about the unison line in Sir Duke. Boom. You take that bar and you repeat it. Boom. It is a dope bass line. That one bar is a masterpiece. The second bar, you know, like it's incredible. And so what's the hurry? Don't try to cram and play the whole thing poorly. Bust it into small, bite-sized, incredible pieces and zoom in your macro lens, right? Get close to it. Understand that each bar is so worthy of study. But that's really from a long game mindset. I understand that. I love the way you said this about the two different like strategies of the Vietnam War. I mean, I'm really
the strategy is completely different.
Completely different. Whereas the U.S. is like, let's go in, objective A, B, and C, let's complete these things. And that's why it wasn't successful, right? Because the other team was playing the long game. And I think
it just completely different, yeah.
Yeah. And I think then with music, playing the long game, if you're in it, if it is a lifestyle, oh, what's the hurry? How delightful to work on that one bar. And then the next day you get to work on the next bar because this whole thing should just be expansive. And it should be about the whole life of learning. I mean, but that's, you know, that's from a pretty obsessive place. I know that not everybody feels that way, but I really think honestly, it's the way.
Well, when you were saying that, I had a great classical guitar teacher.
Yeah.
I studied classical guitar with 3 people. One of them was so great, but actually all of them were exactly the same. And anybody who studied classical music or an instrument and just played like classical stuff on that instrument and studied with a teacher doing that stuff will know exactly. It's very different to how like bass or rock guitar or whatever is taught. In classical, dude, it is bar by bar.
Yes.
In fact, it's note by note. It's because when I can remember like sitting down and I'd look, you know, open up this piece of music or whatever. And just for context as well, I did classical guitar for, I don't know, like, you know, got grade 8 and stuff like that. And you know, did it for whatever.
Wow.
You guys don't do the grades, do you? So,
but I know that's high level, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like it's university level. So it's university level basically. So I can remember like opening these really hard pieces of music and just to put, so like a really hard piece of music might be, you are going to play 8 minutes of solo classical guitar.
Yeah.
Like just imagine like playing 8 minutes of solo bass.
Yeah, right.
Like, oh,
that's a long time.
Kill me now. That'd be so hard. It'd be so hard, right?
Right.
So 8 minutes of written classical guitar. And I can remember just thinking, like, even being like 3 bars in and just like, even less than that, and just thinking, I can't play this.
Right.
even like I can't play the first bar.
Right.
Just like I'm like, oh god, it feels all wrong.
Yes.
Oh, but the way that they teach it is exactly like that. Okay, we're going to take the first 4 bars and we're just going to focus on that. And so you're working on these first 4 bars, going bar by bar, making sure that everything's dialed in. Then it's the next 4 bars. And then you just go through this process. And then lo and behold, in like 2 or 3 months, you can play this thing that you never thought possible, that you couldn't even play the first few bars. It's just a completely different work. Yeah, it's just a different way of working. So when you said you go bar by bar, I was like, oh yeah, bar by bar. That's exactly, because I do that now. Like I do that if I'm working, if I'm trying to work out something hard, I'm just like, because classical guitar was really the first thing I did. It's what I fall back on. I'm just like, okay, I know how to do this. When something's impossible, I know how to do this. I know that it's not impossible. I just know that I need to go through this process of doing it bar by bar.
For sure. And the thing for me, I'm sure you do this too, is like I'll grab one of those pieces and then just make it its own groove. And I imagine every time with those bars, what if this were the ostinato bass line for a song? I would learn it. I would memorize it. Like it wouldn't be hard. If you go bar by bar, it's not hard because if you memorize any ostinato figure that you're playing for any tune, you play that all night in a band or whatever. You just have to think about it that way, right? That like each bar, it could just be its own bass line, and then you start to string those things together. And man, I used to teach at this school, and there was a classical guitar teacher there named Jeff Warren. Jeff, if you're out there, he was so wonderful, and just a consummate, like graceful, incredible guy and teacher. And he did a thing with his students on certain pieces where he would start with the last bar. Did you ever do this? And work his way backwards through a piece? He said, because what happened a lot would be that you would work on the first 4 bars, and then you'd get 8 bars. And then maybe your practice would sort of fall off, and then the middle of the piece was a nightmare. And then you'd kind of maybe finish it strong or whatever. But that he said if you learned it backwards, what happened is you had all this incredible muscle and brain memory around the end of the piece. And actually then as you went through, it built confidence. So like as you were going through the piece, it would build this sense of like, oh, like you would get more empowered as you went through it. Now, if you had to make it through the beginning, but more familiarity with the end. And he said there were a lot of people that would struggle, in the middle sections or the end of a piece. I've never done that, but have been very intrigued by that of like start with the end and move backwards. And then as you go, you just sort of like, oh, I know this, that's kind of
cool. Like I've never done that, but I can imagine that approach or some different approaches to doing it, because I've definitely suffered from the symptoms that he's talking about.
Yes.
So I've been like, that first, however many bars, that first minute of the tune, I've nailed it.
Yeah.
But when he goes to this B section, what's it called? The stew? There's a great classical guitar player called Asturias, and I can remember learning that. It's actually the Doors use this as well for one of their tracks. They use the intro or kind of like similar thing. Yeah, they used Asturias to the intro track to one of the Doors tunes. And I kind of like learning this piece, and as it went to the B section, it was a monster. And I'd nailed sort of like the first like minute or minute 30, and then it went to this other set. I was like, what is this all about? And then to keep the same groove.
Yeah.
So it was this really fantastic rhythm, real straight, fantastic rhythm. And then it went to this other section and the rhythm stayed the same, but from a technical standpoint, it was like 2 times or 3 times as hard.
Yeah.
But the ostinato stayed the same.
Oh, wow.
So there was like this similar ostinato, but like 3 times the notes.
Crazy.
I can remember just being like, oh, but exactly, yeah. So my point is, I've definitely suffered from that. Like I got through it and I learned it, but it was hard because what happens is you have to start ignoring sections of the tune, right? You're like, right, I've got the intro down. Now I'm just going to have to do this, this section here to like a minute 30 into like 3 minutes 30 or whatever. Then you practice the heck out of that. Then you're like, okay, Now I'm going to go back to the intro. Oh, now I can't do that so well. So it's such a different skill set and experience than to learn in the stuff that we play, right?
It's so true. And I think too, I see so many students that are just like, oh man, I need to learn this song, today, or I need to, if I'm not going to play the whole thing, then it's like, oh, no, it's okay. Just break it up, and playing bits of it really, really well will be so much better for you than playing the whole thing shitty. What I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Like that happens a lot, doesn't it? You'll have seen it when people just play an entire track just pretty crap. I mean, and you're just like, they haven't, and it's not their fault. They just haven't. Nobody said, oh, by the way, it's I understand you want to play it, but it's really important just to go bar 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 and just like nail it down. And you can hear it when you also see players that have done that, where like they'll have one bit licked and then they'll move into this other section and they're sort of like stumbling a bit, and that's cool, because we all do that, and that's it's the process of learning. Of course.
Yes.
Dude, should we call it? I need to call it. My wife is going to be like, my wife's going to kick in my ass. And I said right at the beginning of the podcast, I was like, she is grumpy. I love her so much, but she's so ill at the minute and so much snot. She's, do you know what we should do? We should do a podcast on Lisa one time. She's really great, my wife. She's, if it wasn't for her, there wouldn't be any SBL because,
dude, I need to get to know Lisa,
she was like, oh, she's cool, man. And she's really talented as well. She's a great singer.
Oh, so cool.
Really great. She actually sounds like Diana Ross. That's like how she sounds. It's like,
oh my God, man. That's incredible.
And she looks nothing like Diana Ross. She sounds like, she's just got such a killer voice.
Wow.
And but she can't, we're homeschooling the kids and stuff. She went to a gig the other night. And she got back at like midnight. I'm in bed. I'm just like, I heard her come in, right? Like knocking shit over. I'm just like, really? Anyway, she comes into the bedroom. Bedroom light comes on. I'm like, it's midnight.
Like, come on, babe.
I need to start gigging again. I'm like, I know, you need to start gigging again. But I'm going to do some videos with her. I really want to do a video just where she's singing and stuff like that.
You got to. You should do some duet music with her. Where you're playing bass.
I know, yeah.
Do the Andres.
Yeah.
That'd
no, I really should.
Cool.
How's that thing? I want to ask about you and Cara, but let's do that. Let's do that next time.
Yeah,
you've been doing the duo stuff, haven't you?
Yeah, man. Very, very influenced by Andres, man. But yes, another time. It's all good. It's a lifelong journey, Scott Devine. We're going to do this again.
We're in it for life, dude. Guys, thanks so much for listening. If you have not, if you've not checked us out on Spotify, we're there.
We're there.
We're on Spotify now. You actually might be listening to us on Spotify. Somebody's going like, dude, I'm listening to you guys on Spotify. We're on Spotify, on iTunes. Leave us a review in all of the places. It will really help us. And just, if you're on Instagram as well, give us a shout out. Please. Like we've seen people sort of like, posting about the podcast. That'd be amazing if you do so, and tag us, and then we'll give you a shout back as well. That'd be wicked. Anyway, dudes, from me, see you later.
Cheers, everybody.